Okay, so now we're going to implement some more functionality in our app, and this should be the final step in implementing functionality. So we're going to implement the reset function. So we have a function that's going to handle the button press right now, but it's not doing anything. So we're going to have a reset function that will reset everything to 0 and change some label text and stuff. And then we're going to fix a few annoying little bugs just to improve the app performance. So one is going to be a bug that will cause the app to crash, and one will be just kind of an annoying little thing which I think improves the user experience once it's fixed. Okay, so now we've implemented some of the functionality but not quite all of it. However, we have done enough to actually run the app and see it kind of working. So let's go ahead and do that now. We'll just run it again using that play button. And basically this way we can see the functionality of the calculate button and handling the input text. So at the very least we can see some of it working, and then we'll go back and finish off the rest. So it might be a good idea to kind of keep running your application just to make sure everything is kind of working as it should be. So let's go ahead and enter in some numbers here. So the keyboard's up again. I don't really want that, so I'm just going to go back to hardware and deselect that, or rather check that box off. So let's enter a number. Let's enter 56 and calculate, and we get 56.0 to start off with. And then let's enter something like 1. Press calculate, and there we have it. It calculates the new average. Let's say 12, 23 now. Let's say 200, and we get 67.25. Okay, that's great. So we know that this is working every time. So once we enter a number and press calculate, it's now calculating the new average and displaying it. And if you don't believe me, go back and check those values out. The numbers were, I believe, 56, 1, 12, and 200. However, if we press the reset button, still nothing is happening. And also, this text is still being displayed here every time, so that's kind of annoying as well. If we want to enter new numbers, we have to kind of get rid of it and then enter a new number. So we're going to minimize that and stop that. So one of the good things you can take away from running your app frequently is you can pick up on annoying behaviors that you don't want in your app anymore. So for example, one of the annoying behaviors I saw was that in the app itself, once we press the calculate button, we then have to delete the current text input text and then enter a new text. So there's a way to circumvent that issue, or rather a way to just solve that issue altogether, and we'll look at that in just a bit here. The first thing I want to do is make sure our reset values button is actually working. So what we're going to do is, from our press reset button, we're just going to call reset values. Okay, right now it's not doing anything, but we're going to implement some functionality now. So what we're going to do is we're going to change all of our variables back to 0. So average should be 0, total should be 0, and count should also be 0. So this is just resetting all of our values, and it's then going to call display average again. So in fact, let's have it set the display text to something else. So then after we reset the values, we can have something like LBL display average outlet.text saying something like your average or no average or something, maybe just display average. So back to what it was originally. Okay, so let's save this and run it again and see if our reset values button is working as it should. So basically it's just changing the values back to 0, and it's displaying some kind of different text on our LBL display average outlet text. So we'll go open up the simulator again, and this is kind of being annoying. There we go. Okay, so now let's enter in a number. Let's just enter in 1. We get 1. Let's enter in 3. Should get 2. Let's enter in 5. We get something else. We get 3, and now reset. And now it's back to display average. And if we were to enter in 1, we get the average reset back to 1. So let's say we had 500. Let's just enter in some random numbers. That's funny, that worked out to the same number. Okay, and then reset. And then if we enter in 67, for example, yeah, it's back to 67. So we know the averages are going to 0, the counts are going to 0, and the totals are going back to 0. So that's good. Life is good. Our app is working pretty much as it should. So we're going to minimize this and stop running it. Now, did you guys notice that annoying behavior where we had to delete the text every time? Well, let's fix that now. So let's say that every time the calculate button is pressed, we're going to change that text of the input text, or rather of the text field, to be blank. So what we can do is we can call txt text outlet or input text outlet dot text dot, and then we can say remove all. So this is a built-in function that just takes whatever text is there already in this text field and just removes it all. So it takes it all out and leaves it blank. So this will basically ensure that once a calculate button is pressed, it's going to take in our input, increase count, call our calculate function, display the average, and then it's just going to remove whatever text is currently in the input field. Okay, so this is the nice thing. We'll probably be using this function, this dot remove all, a lot. I know I do. I use it in almost any time there's some kind of a text input, just because I get annoyed by having to press backspace a bunch of time, delete all those numbers, and then enter new ones. Okay, so that is very good. We know that's all working as it should be. So let's go ahead and run this one more time. And we should have a fully functioning app functioning exactly how we want it to by the end. And here we go, we're going to open up Simulator, and sometimes if you left click on Simulator it doesn't work, so usually I just have to right click and select the iPhone SE. And there we go, it's pulled up now. So if we just enter some numbers, and then reset, it resets back to this, and then notice how each time I press calculate, those numbers are disappearing, so that I don't have to, keep deleting them, and so on and so forth. Okay, and I see. So the reason it quit there, the reason it exited, was because I had no number in the input field when I pressed the calculate button. However, that's a simple enough fix. What we can do is we can just put this all in some kind of a big if statement. So we can say if the txt input text outlet dot text does not equal blank text or dot is empty. So if it's not empty, then we can do all of this, and otherwise just don't do anything. So oops, just going to indent everything there. So the change I made was just a pretty simple one. And let's see what the issue is. Optional type boolean. Okay. Fix it, replace this with this. And that's fine. So basically all we're doing here is we're checking to see that the text is not empty. So the exclamation mark there is just kind of unwrapping it, or just making sure that it doesn't contain the value nil, and this is just saying not. So this is if the text input, or the txt input text outlet.text is not empty, that's why this is here. If it's not empty, then do all of this. Otherwise, just don't do anything. Else, we can even have some kind of a message, so we could say else have the display text, the LBL display average outlet dot text say something like you need to enter a number. Silly. Well, there we go. Okay, so now let's save this. Remember, always save. Keep saving as often as you can, because there have been countless times when I personally have lost, a large chunk of code when I've been making progress just because I haven't saved and something's happened. Okay, so let's stop this and rerun it. Okay, and again, this is a good idea to keep running it, because I didn't really notice that problem before, but now I know it's a problem, so I dealt with the problem accordingly. I mean, imagine if we had released this app to the App Store, and then someone had come across this and then complained and given us a 0.5-star review or something. So if we do nothing, then we get no errors. The app doesn't close if there's no number. It just says you need to enter a number, silly. Okay, so now we can enter numbers accordingly, and it's fine. Life is good, you know. Okay, and then if we reset, it just resets everything. Cool. So now we have a fully functioning app. The functionality is all done, and we're good to go. We'll just work on fine-tuning the design so our app no longer looks like this, because we want our app to look nice and, you know, an attractive looking app. This is not so good. This is kind of plain. So yeah, this next part will just be the last part, and it'll just be dealing with making the app look more visually appealing. Okay, so in this part of our tutorial, we just implemented some more functionality in our app. So we just implemented the reset functionality first, which handled what would happen when the reset button is pressed, and that just kind of sets everything back to 0 and has our label text just display average again. We also fixed a bug that caused our app to crash, and this was happening when we would try to calculate the average with an empty text field, as well as made sure the input text field has text remove each time, and that was more so just like a little annoyance of mine that I kind of like to implement in most of my apps.